think the way you help small businesses is by helping all businesses, all small businesses, bringing down the business tax rate. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the entire industrialized world right now. And we got to this point, I believe, by having the government pick winners and losers. By having the government out there deciding who's going to get subsidies, who's going to be taxed at this rate, who's going to be taxed at that rate. And pretty soon, we've got businesses that are getting more and more tax load put on them because we're favoring other companies. We talked about agriculture. Now, I'm not talking about Christmas tree farms here, and they're the best things in the world. But we've got subsidies here out west on some of these big farms. We've been paying people not to grow things since the Great Depression. And we wonder why prices are going up now at the grocery store and we have to import food from overseas. Get rid of subsidies as much as we can, level the playing field for all businesses, get the government, state and federal, out of the business of picking winners and losers, and let all businesses do well at a lower tax rate. And you'll see this country explode. You'll see corporations, if we can bring that tax rate down to 10%, make it one of the most competitive in the world instead of the worst, you would see companies flooding in from Europe, from Mexico, from Canada. You'd have the President of Mexico calling the President of the United States to complain about us stealing all their companies and jobs. But we're not going to get there if we have a government in Hartford and in Washington, frankly, both parties are very guilty of it, who want to pick the winners and losers. Let's get the government out of that business, and I pledge to you that I will do that in Congress. Thank you, Jeff.
Again, to me, this is a real simple answer. Get government out of the way of our small businesses and our businessmen. American businessmen are still the best in the world, whether they're large businesses or small businesses. You know, this running for office, for this office, gets in your blood and your mind. I woke up this morning to the radio on WTIC, and I heard alarming news. President Obama is ready to propose that the corporate income tax be lowered. What a shock that, 6, 7, 8 months before the election, he finally sees the light and realizes what will actually bring business back to the United States and bring profits back to the United States. Now, his proposal is to drop it to 25%. It's currently at 35%, highest in the world. But, that's not nearly far enough. But that's how you create jobs. Now, as far as with agriculture, Farmington still has farms. So, and we have active farms. And one of our farmers had a great new idea. He's a dairy farmer, and he was getting cream. Cream. That's I didn't even mean to do that. But he was just, again, dairy farming is not a good industry to be in right now. And so he came up with a great idea. He wanted to create yogurt. And what he had to do, and remember, this is an entity that the town owns the land. He leases the land from the town. But what the town and this farmer had to do to create this business was simply outrageous. And he finally, it took him about 18 months to get it off the ground. But it just shows you, here's someone who's ready to be an entrepreneur, who's ready to put some of his own money out there. And what does he get from government regulations and visits, from regulators every single day? And it just shows the difficulty that's involved.
Thank you. Your position on abortion?
My position on abortion is very clear in my mind, and it's based on a case that I worked, and I'll share very briefly with you, that moved me tremendously in New York. And I am pro-choice. Again, I believe that the government should not be in this business in any way, shape, or form. And that this is a decision that a woman and her doctor and her family has to make. And I worked a case, I don't want to bore you with this, I worked a case in New York when I was in the FBI, and I saw what happens when you go down the route of illegal abortions. And I'll never forget what I saw and how that moved me. And I never want to see anyone have to face that decision again, to go see what I consider to be a butcher at work. And so, again, I just do not want the government to be making a decision like that for any person, family, or for any woman.
Thank you.
As the parent of a small child, I don't think anyone can face this issue without a great deal of struggle. Personally, I abhor the concept of abortion. But like Mike, I don't believe that government has a role in injecting itself between a woman and her doctor when making a decision of that nature.
I don't believe in federal financing. I don't believe in late-term abortions. I do believe in parental notification. I'm pro-choice, but I want abortions to be legal, safe, and rare.
I'm pro-life.
Thank you. Let's see, Justin, you get to start off. What is the single most important challenge facing our country today?
Our biggest challenge is economic growth. Right now, our economy is growing at about 1%. And to put that into context, if you look at the average during the Great Depression, we grew at 1.7%. And we're effectively in a depression here. And no amount of cutting is going to get us to a balanced budget if we have these anemic levels of growth. And no amount of government stimulus programs or spending programs on busways and hospitals and this and that is going to get us full employment if we grow the economy at 1%. The Obama administration is putting out these numbers that claim that unemployment is going down. It's a farce. They're playing with numbers. People are dropping out of the workforce in record numbers, at record speeds. And a lot of people aren't even entering the workforce. You have entire generation coming out of college. Some of you, these may be your kids, who are finding it impossible to get jobs, certainly in Connecticut. So we've got to focus on economic growth. And that means very clearly a lower business tax, real spending reductions so that that capital can be freed up for private sector investment. Reining in the Federal Reserve because our monetary policy is killing economic growth. And repealing Obamacare and other job-killing regulations like Dodd-Frank, like Sarbanes-Oxley. If you do those things, those 4 simple steps, and I'm not reinventing the wheel here, these are things that Ronald Reagan did when he came into office in 1981 and the country was in a recession. They'll work again. These are time-tested principles. We ought to run on them. We ought not to run away from them. The American people, the Connecticut voters will support us if we do.
Again, I'm going to fall right back into what I've kind of been preaching to the choir, I think, this evening. And that is debt, which is directly related to jobs, which is directly related to certainty for our corporate entities and our small businesses. $16 trillion of debt. 42 cents out of every dollar spent being borrowed is simply untenable. And until we come up with a policy, we start making real decisions to rein in that debt, we are simply going to have stagnant growth because our major corporations are going to send their jobs to a more business-friendly country, if you will, China, India. That's where they're going to go. So we absolutely have to make decisions, and I'm talking about decisions after this election cycle, on how we're going to handle our debt situation and how we're going to move forward in working with our corporate partners and with our small business people and with our banks rather than against them.
Thank you.
There's no doubt that the greatest challenge facing our country is the economy that affects all of us. But I want to talk about something that is an even deeper problem that we face. And that is the absence of faith that people have in the institutions of our government. At the time of President Kennedy's assassination, a poll was conducted of American citizens, and they were asked, do you trust the federal government, the Congress of the United States of America, to do the right thing? And 70% of Americans said, yes, I trust the federal government to do the right thing. Today, when that question is asked, fewer than 20% of Americans answer the question yes. And I have to say, I put myself in the category of those who answers the question no. Serving as a state legislator, I have a lot of accomplishments about which I am proud. Not the least of which I forgot to mention in my opening remarks, is that I haven't missed a single vote in 18 years of service in Hartford. I've been president for 8,470 consecutive votes. I'm the only legislator who has that record. The people that I represent work hard. I've always thought they deserve a senator who works as hard, or tries to work as hard, as they do. But the greatest satisfaction that I receive as an elected official is that it happened last Saturday. I was at the Washington Montessori School at a puppet show, and the headmaster of the school, I have no idea what her political affiliation was. She took me into her office. She said, "Andrew, you restored my faith in government." There was a proposal to put a cell tower whose shadow would be cast in the playground of the Montessori school. And the families whose kids went there weren't enthusiastic about that proposition. And so I advocated on their behalf, and we found an alternative. And I restored her faith in government. So what I'd like to think we as Americans can look forward to is a government in which we have faith. That challenge is enormous. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Well, I've been in this race for over 10 months, and I've spoken to groups from manufacturers to college students to teachers to healthcare executives. And you know, the biggest challenge that I find out there is fear. There's uncertainty and fear about the future. They're fearful for their jobs, or they're fearful for their kids coming out of college is getting jobs. They're fearful because their house is underwater. They're fearful that the gas prices are going to go up this summer. They're fearful that our tax changes are really going to challenge their business. 2 weeks ago, I spent time in Watertown. It was a 4th-generation manufacturing plant. And the owner was the president of the company, and he was one of 4 brothers that owned it. And he was fearful that they wouldn't make it to the 5th generation. So fear is our challenge, and the fear comes from a lack of leadership. We need to have people in Washington that set the tone and really understand what the people on Main Street are going through. That's what I want to bring. I want to bring that common sense, that standard bearer of this is what it really is like in Connecticut. Not someone that's become so inside the Beltway that they've forgotten what it's really like in our towns and our communities and our cities. So fear is the challenge, and we can overcome. We can, because we are an optimistic society. We've got to infuse our businesses with optimism and kick in that competitive spirit that made us so great. We have that ability, and I know that I'd be just one cog in the wheel, one piece of that puzzle. But you know, I've done it before. I've had many, many challenges in my life, and I've overcome many, many. So this is just one more obstacle to overcome, but I believe that we can do it, and you know, we've got a lot of fighters out there. So that's the challenge.
Mark, directly into the closing.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to come to this great town. And the challenge that we have in this country, we know about the economic challenge. We know about the $15 trillion debt, getting higher and higher every single day, literally. We know about the 40% spent on debt, untenable number. At 1%, you imagine what it would be at 4% interest rate. You know, we know about 3 years without a budget. 3 years without a budget. I can't go with my household without having a budget for the next year for 1 year. Businesses can't exist without a budget on an annual basis. But this Senate has gone 3 years. I think that there's an integrity problem in Washington. I think that this House has its roof collapsing within because the foundation, which is Congress, the Senate, the presidency, are falling apart. We have to bring back integrity to that Congress, to that Senate, to the presidency. We have to take back those offices this year in 2012. We have to do that because if we don't get this steamship turned around quickly, we're going to be leaving an America less than the one that we grew up in. We have to change things. We really do. Now the 30 seconds plus a closing though, right?
Right.
Okay, I just want to be sure about that, but I'll just go right on in. Anyway, but another thing we have to realize, we have to be very, very careful The Constitution tells us that we have to, job one, protect our borders. We haven't talked about that much at this forum. But keep in mind that what we put into place with the deal last year automatically will reduce military spending by a great deal, which will put us in peril. We cannot be weak. We learned in the 30s in Europe that if you're weak and if you have a policy of appeasement, that you pay later for it. This is not the America that I grew up in. We have to be strong. We have to be number one. We have to be the leaders in this world. This is a smaller world where everything can be reached by internet and by telephone conversation. Our borders are literally 16,000 miles around the globe. So we have to be very, very careful of not falling asleep during my talk, but that's okay. It's been very, very long. And I hope that, I brought some of my philosophies to you, and I hope that it's clear in your mind what I believe in. I hope that you will give me the great, great honor of being your nominee for this 5th District. Thank you very much.
First, thank you to the Blooms for putting this together. For Pat Loger, where's Pat? Is she here tonight? Thank you, Pat, for winning big in Newtown and leading the RTC with, of course, the help of the executive committee. And thanks for everyone for coming tonight. I want to just talk a little bit. I've got about a minute and a half left. I've shown you a couple of you my watch here that my daughter had found recently. We moved a couple months, in fact, before the redistricting was done, which made my wife a little bit nervous. I said, "But don't worry, Jenny. They draw us out of the district. We're still going to live here." And she found this old watch that I had from Afghanistan. I hadn't seen it in a few years, and she pulled it out and she was waving around. She was only 19 months old, so I thought she was going to drop it in the toilet bowl. But I took it away and I looked at it. It was kind of dinged up and a little bit grimy. And it got me thinking about time. In Afghanistan and Iraq, everybody has a watch because minutes, seconds, certainly hours can be the difference between life and death. You come back to the States, you go to Hartford, you go to DC, not so many watches, no one's checking the time. There's no sense of urgency. What I feel out there, and I go to all 41 towns all the time, many of you see me around here, is a sense of urgency that the voters have right now. They're anxious, they're eager for action. They want a candidate who's not going to just be vanilla like all the other career politicians that came before. They want a candidate that's going to show leadership by presenting daylight between the Democrats and us. That's leadership. If you want to get those liberal votes, I'm not the guy. But if you want to get independent votes, conservative Democrats, keep our base together, very important, I'm your guy. We have all those type of voters in Plainville. I talk to them all the time. They are not looking for another career politician to make minimal changes. They're looking for bold leadership, big changes. And they'll support us. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to support a candidate whose principles you believe in. Because the voters will not support us on election day if they think that we're not behind our own candidate. We're not going to trick the voters. We are, though, going to give them a positive vision about the future of America with real solutions and real leadership. We do that, we're going to win this race, and a lot of them like it. We're going to turn this country around. We're going to do it in short order. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
I had a little advantage because I knew this debate was coming to a close because I saw Vincent saying, "We're done." Okay, so thanks for the heads up on that. But folks, again, I appreciate you coming out and being here and being informed and listening to all of us as we present our positions and our ideas on how we're going to change this country. And again, I believe, again, Newtown is a great town. Why? Because they've had excellent leadership and they're fiscally responsible. The state of Connecticut is a great state. I was very fortunate to have lived here for 21 years and not been transferred as I was early in my federal career. And we can't say the same thing about some of the fiscal leadership that we've had in Hartford, especially with our current governor. And in Washington, it's even, exponentially higher. Incredibly poor fiscal leadership. What I want to present to you, again, is this is a job interview. You've heard all of us talk, you've heard us present our positions. And now it's time for you to look at us and to drill down and just look at what we've accomplished in our life, where we've served, where we've worked, and where positions we've been elected to, and what we've done when we've been elected to those positions, and whether the voters have seen fit to send us back to those positions. Again, what I bring to the table is 35 years of professional work experience, serving our country as an FBI agent, working for the largest employer in this state, and being elected, proudly elected, to another great town, Farmington, that also is fiscally responsible. And I want to take the lessons that I've learned from those years and bring them to Washington, because I know that this country can return to its greatness with the right people in place. But if we don't make the right decisions in 2012, we're going to be so far down the road that we are going to, we're not going to be able to turn this ship around. So again, thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate your attention and being here this late.
Thank you, Dennis, and thanks to each and every one of you who have made their business to get to know the candidates who wish to represent you in the United States Congress. I wish that everyone who was a voter in this district had a homework assignment to get to know the candidates. You have already completed your homework assignment. You get extra credit for having done it so early in the process. And I hope you'll do it again, because this is obviously, this campaign is a marathon. It is not a sprint. For the past 18 years, I've given a great deal of my life to public service, while at the same time maintaining a small business and meeting a payroll. When the fourth graders come to Hartford, a question that's often asked of me is, Senator Roraback, how much money do you make as a senator? And the answer goes something like this. We make about $32,000 a year. And the fourth graders go, wow! So I guess I will happily take the criticism that I'm a career politician if that means I've spent 18 years trying to better the lives of my friends and neighbors and the communities that I represent. What distinguishes me from this panel of candidates, perhaps with the exception of Mike, is that I have a record as an elected official. I don't ask you to take my word, my promises of what I'll do for you in Washington. I say, look what I've done in Hartford. What I've done is what I'll do. Who I am is who I'll be. When Dr. Salk discovered the cure for polio, he was asked the following question. Dr. Salk, what is the greatest reward for the superb work that you have done? And he said, the greatest reward for work well done is the opportunity to do more work. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to earn your confidence to be the Republican nominee, to carry our party's flag to the election in November, to win that election, and to be your voice in the United States Congress. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here.
Well, folks, we are at a tipping point. We can be makers, or we can be takers. We can be an entitlement society, or you can be an opportunity society. I know what kind of country I want to be in. I want to go to Washington, not for special interests. I want to go there for people like you and my 7 kids back home. You know, we have 3 major crises going on in this country. We have a jobs crisis. I am a jobs candidate. I don't just theoretically talk about creating jobs. I've created more jobs in the past 6 months that all of my Democratic candidates have in their lifetimes. We have a healthcare crisis. I don't just talk tidbits about healthcare. I've spent the last 30 years of my life studying healthcare. I'm just about to receive my doctorate in healthcare with 1 semester to go. I've got a project that I still have to work on tonight. We have a debt crisis. My fundamental core is about solving that debt crisis and paying off our nation's debt. So the 3 problem areas, that's my background and my skills. I want to go to Washington and represent the voters in this room. I want to get the job done, and I want to come back home. So when you look at the 5 candidates up here, and we said it in the very beginning, we all have the opportunity to be much better congressmen than what the Democrats are going to put up. But look at us and figure out which one can actually win in November and do the job that we need to do. Thank you.
Newtown RTC would like to thank everyone that came from other RTCs this evening. We really appreciate you coming. Round of applause for all of our candidates.
Jump out of